While much of the focus in 007's world lately has been on the newest Bond release, First Light, this video is going back to one of the most beloved 007 classics, GoldenEye, which is still seeing big changes almost 30 years later and will continue to see exciting changes. With a project released for GoldenEye XBLA titled Recomp Project and a Recomp project for the original Nintendo 64 version that is 85% of the way there as of the time of this video, it's shaping up to be an exciting year. So in this video, I'm going to be covering the most recent Recompilation project, which is based on GoldenEye XBLA, my opinions about the new project, how you can set it up, and then I'll close it off with some commentary about what I think is coming next in terms of these two Recompilation projects that are in the works. Now, before we get into the details, I do want to quickly touch on what GoldenEye XBLA is. So GoldenEye XBLA was supposed to be a remaster of Nintendo 64's GoldenEye, but for Xbox 360. However, the project was ultimately unfinished, and it seems this was largely over legalities concerning rights and things like that. Now, as you may have already deduced from the fact that people are playing this game and doing YouTube videos about it, the game was leaked a couple of years ago, and it became playable to the general public through sources that I'm not allowed to disclose here. Google. Despite being an unfinished game, XBLA has benefited from patches and fixes created by the modding community over the years, and these improvements have been meant to help with various quality of life improvements, so graphics, lighting, stability, texture fixes, and there's even tools now that let you add custom sound and music to the Xbox 360 XBLA game. So this recent Recomp project is about XBLA, the Xbox 360 version, the unfinished game, not the original Nintendo 64. But there is a Recomp project in the works as well for the N64 version, which is about 85% of the way completed. So that one's also getting close, and I'll talk about this one at the end and what I think is in store for both of these projects. Now, with regards to this new project based on XBLA, I deduced from the author's comments on GitHub that the project has gotten a lot of hate. I've also seen people that are very excited about it on YouTube, so I'm going to cover both sides and then I'm going to give you my own opinions of this. On the negatives, I've seen accusations of AI slop because this was done through AI assisted development, and I think that's really ticked a lot of people off. Some of the other negative commentary I've seen comes from individuals saying this is not a true recomp or is simply a Xenia wrapper that just allows you to run a GoldenEye executable from your desktop. Frankly, I'm not really interested in getting into the weeds of that, mainly because I don't fully understand it, and truly, I don't care. If it works well and it's fun to play, it has potential for things like online multiplayer, I'm going to play it and I'm going to be supportive of the project. And for me, that's as simple as I want it to be. So yeah, it's a new project. Things are often rough at the onset of a new project, especially one based on a game that wasn't even finished to begin with. But you know, it's great and useful to point out bugs, ideas for general improvements, and everything in between, because that's how the project is going to improve. So if you like the game, you want to see more people playing the game, then just have a constructive conversation about it. Anyways, enough of that. As you can probably already tell, I'm pretty excited about the project. The words PC port are a wet dream for me because I've seen how great N64 classics like Perfect Dark and Mario 64 can run on a modern PC port with uncapped FPS and 4K graphics. I don't think we're quite at 300 FPS and 4K on this particular project like some people have claimed, but I don't doubt it's possible and we'll see it happen at some point. I think there's also something very exciting for fans about seeing XBLA for the first time. Done a number of playthrough videos for XBLA missions and N64 custom missions, and there's just something really special about seeing the transformation of runway or dams, new skylines, or just those gorgeous sexy mountain peaks in Surface 1. So for the people that are really excited about the project, I think this goes back to the nostalgia of reliving this classical game in a new way and having a new visually appealing way to re-experience it. So in terms of how you play this thing, there's a repository on GitHub, which I've linked in the description below about the project, and you're going to need to download and unzip that into a folder location of your choice. Now you're going to need to supplement this with files that come from the download of the GoldenEye XBLA game. Now you will need to do that part on your own, but I just want to give a word of caution here, which is there's various websites and various things that have hosted an XBLA game file in some way, shape, or form. Some of these sites can and will introduce malware and other undesirable things to your machine, so just be careful with where you're sourcing this from. There's also two different versions kicking around. One of them will not work with some of these patches and things, and I'm not even sure if it's going to run this Recomp project. The zip file you want should look like this. There's going to be a bean folder, and then there's going to be another file called Fyodorovna.nfo. The version you don't want is going to be titled XBLA_retail, and it's going to have a folder with a bunch of zeros, so that's not the one you want. So once you have the right zip file, which should be called something like GoldenEye 007 XBLA.zip or .7z, open that up, go into the bean folder, and then drag all of those files into the repository folder you created from GitHub in a new subfolder called assets. Once you're done, head back into the main directory and click the GoldenEye.exe executable to open up the game. First time around, there's probably going to be a few things you want to change from the default configuration in terms of graphics, resolution, controls, and that sort of thing. So to make those changes, all you have to do is hit the escape key, which is going to bring up the in-game menu where you can make these adjustments. I made some adjustments to play at 3x resolution, so to go up to 4K. I set the setting for FPS to be uncapped, and then I made a few tweaks here and there to mouse controls. I think the menu is intuitive, it's easy to use, and it's easy to use and navigate to help you get going quickly. So the biggest thing for me that I think still needs to be improved is mouse control. There's some YouTubers that have said the mouse controls are 10 out of 10, and I would say, yeah, if you want to use auto aim and play on agent difficulty. At the time I started this video yesterday, version 1.23 had noticeable problems with the crosshair aiming, specifically micro movements shifting your crosshair back to the middle on its own, which made it really hard to aim. Version 1.24 was released yesterday, and while I think it's improved the crosshair aiming, it still felt way too sensitive, which made aiming with snipers or any weapon in general a bit difficult. So hopefully this will continue to improve, as the crosshair aim is quite essential for 00 agent, even for multiplayer. I think the free aim does move fantastic, very smooth, but hopefully the crosshair thing can be fixed, since it is pretty important for peeking those camping Aztecs on asshole. And peeking is just a very big part of multiplayer, especially when you're playing something like License to Kill. So hopefully they can figure this one out, because it will be pretty important for that. Another little thing I noticed on control configuration is that currently there seems to be no detection for some types of mouse controls. By default, the left click will be shooting and right click is aiming down the sight, which makes sense and is consistent with modern FPS, but unfortunately there's no detection of other mouse buttons. So an example of this is the Razer Elite, which has two side buttons, which I've always liked for gadgets or weapon switching, and the mouse scroll either up or down also can't seem to serve as a control currently. So hopefully this is something that can be added as well in future iterations. Beyond that, I noticed little texture things here and there when you go from XBLA graphics to N64 graphics, which is honestly not a big deal. This is just more of a fun way to compare the old graphics with the new ones. There's a few things that I'm sure will get patched in time, like the missing doors in the Egyptian Golden Gun room, but overall I think the game looks and plays great. And I think it feels very similar to the experience you would get on Xenia emulation currently. Like, I think Xenia's mouse hook configuration controls currently feels better, but I think this is pretty good, and I think it's definitely moving in the right direction from what I've seen. The other thing I wanted to talk about here quickly is FPS. I did try to put my settings to 4K with uncapped FPS for my monitor's refresh rate of 120. I don't think this is quite hitting over 60 FPS yet, but we'll see if we can get there in time. Like, I think compared to 30 FPS gameplay, the 60 FPS you get with this is a drastic improvement, and I'm very excited to see what GoldenEye can look like at 120 FPS if and when we get there. It plays great on Perfect Dark, so I expect GoldenEye will play pretty similar to that. Last thing for resolution is, if you are planning on tweaking your resolution settings, make sure you do that before you start a mission, as this will force a soft reset. So probably not something you want to do near the end of Control Center on 00 Agent after successfully rescuing Natalia. Outside of that, the ability to go from XBLA graphics back to N64, which was present already in the Xenia XBLA version, is quite fun. I mentioned earlier, these transformations are visually impressive, and you can see that here for a bunch of the maps. Just the detail on the backgrounds, the textures, the character models, everything just looks very modernized relative to the N64 version. So it's a fun little nostalgia trip, but I think this is probably where XBLA will continue to shine. I have seen improvements made on the texture side of things as well for the N64. So there was a new texture pack released for the N64 GoldenEye late in 2025, which makes the game visually look a lot better. Nothing compared, I think, to what you see on XBLA, but it was still like a pretty drastic improvement, I would say, from what you would be playing on a default configuration with no texture packs or anything like that. So purely from an aesthetics perspective, I think people will continue to be drawn to XBLA because of how nice it looks. It's going to be interesting to see how easy it might be to make this project compatible with existing mods for XBLA, like Merc's Aztec Guards, or others that have been ported and can be played on Xenia or an actual Xbox 360. So in terms of what happens next, if you've seen the Perfect Dark PC port, I think you'll know exactly why people are excited. Like, that project transformed an original beloved N64 classic into something that feels surprisingly modern and crisp. The game can run at 4K at 120 FPS or more because it's uncapped. So it's definitely a great way to re-experience these games. And I think once the original game is re-experienced, I think the question shifts to online gameplay, compatibility, custom content, or mods. And the question is ultimately how easily or quickly mods can be created for XBLA or ported over to an XBLA PC port, or for an N64 PC port once that Recomp project is finalized. So there's definitely a far bigger library of mods and custom content for the N64, since that's been the version most people have been dissecting and understanding for decades. And so while I would expect the N64 PC port would be the go-to for community effort around modding, custom content, and everything else, I still think it's exciting to see where this XBLA project can go. It's clear from the GitHub history and the new releases being done that this is an active project with tweaks and improvements being made almost daily. I see a ton of potential for online play in this project if the control tweaks and things can continue to get improved. On the N64 side, there is a path to playing online as well. There's a path to playing online in the Switch too for people that you have on your friends list. And then there are tournaments and things that are organized through things like the GoldenEye NetRip server, even an annual tournament hosted by ADSI and 3D for GoldenEye XBLA. So we know these games have online multiplayer appeal, and I think if these projects and solutions make the online connectivity component a bit simpler than some of the hack stuff that you need to do to play online with emulation, I hope that's going to be pretty big for the average user and draw more people to the game. For custom missions, gameplay mods, difficulty hacks, and everything in between, I would probably expect the N64 Recomp project, once it's ready, will be the go-to place for that. But honestly, I think both can coexist and live side by side. So 30 years later, in 2026, GoldenEye is still booming and surprisingly in a healthy place. The original game is still played and loved by many. Custom mission creators are still producing new content. And I think some of the buzz from 007 First Light will inevitably bring people back into the 007 franchise to re-explore and rediscover GoldenEye and other classics. So all in all, things look exciting. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Have you tried the XBLA Recomp yet? Do you prefer XBLA or the original N64 version? And which project are you most excited about moving forward? Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next mission.